Imagine, depending on a government payment just to survive. You need it for food, for rent, for the absolute basics. And then, one morning, you wake up, check your bank account, and it's simply gone. No warning, no explanation that makes any kind of sense.
Well, the Australian government has now admitted that the automated system responsible for cutting thousands of people off wasn't even operating legally. And the craziest part? It wasn't a human who made these decisions. A machine pulled the plug first.
For years, this operated as a completely invisible system. The government has formally conceded that between 2020 and 2024, an estimated 310,000 Centrelink payments were canceled unlawfully. That's over 300,000 cases driven by something called the Targeted Compliance Framework, or TCF. Basically, this was a digital system built to enforce mutual obligations for job seekers. If you missed a job application or a meeting with a provider, the system tracked you. It would push you into a penalty zone and eventually completely cancel your payment. But investigators uncovered a massive systemic flaw in how this software actually interpreted the law.
It all comes down to the missing 28 days.
Under Australian Social Security law, your payment cannot be legally canceled the moment you miss an obligation. The law explicitly guarantees a 28-day reconnection period. Because, let's face it, life is messy, right? People get sick, they end up in the hospital, family emergencies happen. The law was designed to give vulnerable people time to reconnect. But the automated code? It completely ignored this. It bypassed that 28-day statutory threshold and just aggressively canceled payments prematurely.
And it gets worse, because the system started entirely bypassing human review.
This is where we see the absolute core of this administrative failure. Back in 2022, after the whole robo-debt scandal, Parliament passed a legislative amendment to make sure automated systems couldn't just operate blindly. Statutory law strictly mandated that a human review had to take place for vulnerable individuals before any cancellation. An actual, living, breathing person had to check if someone was facing homelessness, domestic violence, or severe mental illness. But when you look at the automated code, an ombudsman investigation found that this mandatory human safeguard was never even programmed into the software. The system just bypassed human decision-makers entirely, instantly stripping away income support without a single person ever logging an assessment.
So how did a technological failure of this massive scale stay hidden for so long before turning into an exploding crisis?
The timeline of how this leaked out is wild. In July 2024, the department quietly paused the cancellation module after they found what they thought was just 964 unlawful cases. But then, by August 2025, an ombudsman report pushed that number to over 9,600. Shortly after, independent analysts from Economic Justice Australia crunched the public data and estimated a jaw-dropping 310,000 cases. It actually took until June 2026 for government officials to finally formally concede in Senate estimates that the illegal cancellations were indeed hovering right around 300,000. What started as a quiet IT patch exploded into a full-blown systemic crisis.
To really grasp the gravity of this, we need to look at the harsh financial reality.
Let's put a real number on it. $978 a fortnight. That is the estimated Australian poverty line for a single adult. Standard job seeker rates already fall well below this mark. Now picture trying to survive on a sub-poverty line income during a global energy shock and a brutal winter cost of living crisis. And then an automated system just cuts you off completely. We are talking about real people, some hospitalized or battling severe illness, suddenly forced to survive on dwindling bank balances for months simply because software blindly triggered a compliance penalty.
Kristen O'Connell from the Anti-Poverty Center hit the nail on the head, calling this a catastrophic administrative failure. And the tension here is far from resolved, because even though that specific automated cancellation module is paused, the broader system is still very much alive. Right now, private employment providers are still logging non-compliance, which triggers thousands of automated payment suspensions every single day. The software is still freezing bank transfers until people jump through hoops and contact their private job agencies.
Which naturally leads us to the ultimate accountability question. Who is actually responsible when an algorithm goes rogue? The Albanese government defends itself by arguing they simply inherited a deeply flawed legacy system built in 2018 by the previous administration. They point out they paused the system once the illegality became clear, and they're now shifting to a new three-stream reform model for employment services. On the flip side, the coalition vigorously defends the core idea of mutual obligations. They argue that strict compliance frameworks are absolutely necessary to get people into jobs, pointing out that under their system, the unemployment rate dropped to 3.9%. They warn that tearing down the compliance system would severely wreck welfare integrity.
But advocacy groups and crossbenchers aren't having it. They're demanding immediate, sweeping changes, literally scrapping the TCF entirely. They want an end to compulsory activities like work for the dole, and they're calling for an independent commission to permanently strip suspension powers away from private outsourced agencies. The Greens are even using this crisis as leverage, threatening to hold up major government legislative priorities, including contentious NDIS overhauls, until welfare payments are raised above the poverty line.
And hovering over this entire political fight is the compensation spiral. How on earth do you compensate over 300,000 people who were illegally cut off? The government is arguing that many of these people found work and might not qualify for massive back pay. Legal experts, though, are worried the government might try to push people into restrictive settlements, like the income apportionment scheme, where victims get a small flat-rate payout but have to sign away their right to sue. Meanwhile, welfare advocates are pointing straight at the massive robo-debt class action payouts. If full back pay and damages for psychological harm aren't sorted out, the threat of monstrous, drawn-out litigation is very, very real.
Ultimately, this whole disaster exposes a terrifying new precedent for modern governance. It's called algorithmic override. It happens when the operational logic of automated IT systems essentially supersedes statutory law and parliamentary intent. Think about it. Parliament literally wrote the laws to protect vulnerable people, but the bureaucracy failed to actually program those legal protections into the digital infrastructure. So the software just kept running, bypassing democracy entirely. It's a fundamental breakdown of the rule of law. As governments increasingly hand over the keys to automated systems to manage our healthcare, our taxes, and our public services, it leaves us with one massive, terrifying question. Should software ever have the authority to sever someone's financial lifeline before a real human reviews the situation? Or is catastrophic error now just the unavoidable cost of modern, automated governance?
An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, so why not invest in this channel? Click like and subscribe for more.